Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Relationship Schools podcast here, coming at you live from Boulder, Colorado. What's up, everybody? Hope you're off to a good new year and you're putting one foot in front of the other and putting effort into goals and the life you want and the relationships you want. Okay. Thanks again, everybody, for your reviews. Here's one coming in from Jay Lynn on the Apple Podcasts. I don't normally write reviews, but I was sent this podcast by a dear friend, hooked now. Such good, insightful information, guidance, and constant challenge for us to commit to growing non-mediocre relationships. Plain language and easy to understand. Love this. Cool. Thanks, Jay Lynn, for the awesome review. And man, so many others now just pouring in. Everybody, thank you so much. That allows me and us here at the Relationship School to keep charging ahead with excellent content. I've got some awesome interviews coming up and really psyched. This one is no different. Okay, we're talking about men's work and what the hell that even means and why it's growing in this world that is men's work. It's very powerful. Okay, I was in a men's group for 6 years. We met every other Tuesday, and it was, without that group, I think I would have been sunk, honestly. It helped me in so many areas of my life, and I'm close friends with many of the men in that group still today. Really cool. And actually, a couple men in that group have passed on, passed away, Jeremy and Douglas. Blessings to those guys and their families, wherever they are, out in the ethers. So this is an intimate conversation with my friend Boysen Hodgson, who is the communications director of the Mankind Project. Many of you have heard of the Mankind Project. It's probably the largest and oldest and perhaps most recognized men's work organizations out there. And Boysen is just an amazing human being. We sort of took a stroll down memory lane. I hosted an Evolving Men's Conference many years ago, and he came along with all these other awesome men. So it was cool to just, in the beginning, you'll hear kind of our connection about that. I was a little surprised, actually, about some of the things Boysen said. He's going to talk about what the Mankind Project is, what they're up to, how you can get involved if you want. So you can listen to that. And, it's just an intimate conversation about what's going on with us men in the world today. And Boysen just has a shit ton of experience. He's a father of 2 adopted kids and husband and just an amazing man, amazing human being. I'm really grateful to have him on here. Okay, so check him out. We're about to get started. And as always, stay tuned for the end for your action step. And again, guys, we're just winding down our Relationship School enrollment this year. We still have a few spots left. You can get your application in ASAP at relationshipschool.com/DPIR. Okay, and if you want to become a relationship coach, that's the track. Okay, I'll be doing more coaching webinars coming up, so stay tuned. Make sure you're on our email list. All right? Excellent. Okay, here we go. Welcome to the show, Boysen. What's up?
Yeah, Boysen Hodgson here. I love coming in laughing. That's really cool. So I'm Boysen Hodgson. I'm the communications and marketing director for the Mankind Project USA region. And I am, 60-second about me. I am almost 49 years old, 48 years old. I am married about 14 and a half years to Kendra.
Solid.
Yeah, solid, totally solid. I'm an adoptive dad. I have 2 teenagers, went from being a 0-child family to having an 8 and 10-year-old about 6 years ago. So now I live with 2 teenagers, which is totally wild. And I've been involved in doing men's work for a decade and a half now, 15 years plus. And share some interests with you. Got my cycle trainer set up in the basement. I'm completely devastated that I can't be out there now that I live in Massachusetts. We just got about 1.5 feet of snow over this past weekend. And so now life is about snow shovels rather than pedals and clips.
Yep. I hear you. We just got like 2 feet last week, which was crazy this time of year. And so I was out with the kids today working on their fort. Every day is a new project in the snow fort.
Yeah.
So yeah, we love the snow here. Yeah,
Cool.
cool. Well, I'm so glad to talk to you. We have lots of questions. We have lots to talk about, Boysen. You and I met years ago, I believe, when you came out to the Evolving Men's Conference in Boulder. Yeah?
That's totally it. Reflecting on how I got here, it's just like this feels full circle somehow. And I'll start with gratitude up front, Jason. Just like I met some people at that Evolving Men's Conference that are still deeply connected and friends of mine now.
Wow.
Today. And it led to a whole bunch of stuff in the Mankind Project. And wow, I got goosebumps coming up because it was in a men's group on that weekend in Colorado. I was sitting around a table with a bunch of guys, and we were getting real honest about what we were most afraid of. What was emerging in us that we were most afraid of. And when I dug down deep, and this was long before we adopted kids, I dug down deep, and there was a part of me that awakened as a father sitting at that table.
Whoa.
In Colorado.
I just got chills.
I owned it for those guys, Michael Taylor, Ray Arata, Chris Kyle, Tom Leater. There were a handful of guys in that room, and I cried, and then I stuffed it back down for a couple more years, and then and then it came up. So
oh my God,
gratitude.
That's so cool. Yeah, wow, received. Yeah, that was a powerful time. That was actually a turning point in my life. Also, so wow, cool. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let me get reoriented now. Now that you said all that. Okay. What got you into, quote, men's work, and what is men's work, and what got you into it?
Men's work, yes. So the social emotional exploration of a man's soul, men's work. What got me into it was I grew up surrounded by boys and men. I have 6 brothers. I grew up with 5 of them. I had dads, stepdads, divorces and remarriages, and stepmothers, and that whole thing. And I became an adult man having no clue what it meant to be a man. And by the time I hit 30 years old, the only men that I would have called actual friends of mine were my blood relatives. I was terrified of myself as a man. I was mostly terrified and distrustful of other men. I was unaware of my own kind of power and agency, and trapped behind a self-created mask and set of beliefs that I had been holding myself hostage with. And I reached a point when I was about 30 years old. I had known about the Mankind Project and known about the New Warrior Training Adventure for a number of years. A bunch of my brothers did it. My dad did it. Stepdads did it. All of this stuff. And I had begged off doing it because I was, the truth of it was I was shit scared about telling the truth about my life.
Yeah.
And when I finally got to a point where I was like, okay, I give in, it was, I just gotten out of an 8-year relationship. I was hurting. The relationship had been very painful, a lot of it. And I was seeing a chiropractor, as I have been doing since I was freaking 19 years old, off and on, for doing stupid, abusive things to my body when I was young. And the chiropractor, Wayne Garfinkel, hey, Wayne, takes me out into the hallway after a deep adjustment, and I had cried during this adjustment. Network chiropractor came out into the hallway, and Boysen, I see that you're going through a lot of stuff. I mean, I can see it in your body. I see how things are changing for you. And I just got this hit that I want to put this out to you. Have you ever heard of a thing called the New Warrior Training Adventure? Fuck you, Wayne Garfinkel. I don't want to hear that. And laughed in his face. And then, because he didn't know any of my family, he didn't know anything about my history. And yet he saw something in me that led him to an invitation. And it was after that I signed up for the New Warrior Training Adventure and went through that process in April of 2004. And I've really never looked back.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I have a lot of questions here.
Yeah.
Cool story. Many brothers. My dad had 4 brothers. My wife's dad also had 4 brothers. So it's just interesting. Growing up with that many men around you, you said you were kind of afraid of, I kind of heard afraid of men, afraid of myself, but yet your brothers sounded, at least later in life, they were open enough to go to this kind of men's experience. So what birth order were you, and was there like a lot of competition and abuse, and like, was your dad like domineering and scary? Like, what was the dynamic that had you,
great,
come to some of these conclusions as a kid?
Yeah, there was the first 10, 11 years of my life were kind of idyllic. This is this story I tell now looking back at it. I grew up on a farm. My dad was the like small town veterinarian in upstate New York, surrounded by animals and fields. And, I was like that tow-headed little kid out running in the horse fields and building snow forts and building tree forts and riding my bike and doing all that stuff. Yeah. I was number 2. I have an older brother. I actually have 2 older brothers, but at the time I only had one older brother because Jeff didn't come kind of back into the family, into our lives until years later from my father's first marriage. Okay. My older brother, Wes, is a half brother. He was very different than me. I was kind of a smart, quiet, sensitive kid. And then my brother Jay was like 18 months after me, and then boom, 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 and then right down to my brother John Paul. Okay. So span of 19 years, my mother was giving birth over a span of almost 2 decades. Wow. God rest her soul. And I deeply love and admire. My mom died in 2002. My mom was an incredibly powerful, strong woman. My dad is just turned 77. My dad's an incredibly powerful, beautiful, charismatic, funny guy, and not real good at being faithful. Mm. And that was the story of their marriage ending. Was all of a sudden it went from this idyllic childhood to chaos.
What age?
An implosion. I was 10, 11 years old.
Wow.
When all this came about. And I learned later, learned the story of my dad later, of kind of what had happened. But what I took on, the beliefs that I took on was, God, you look like your dad, you sound like your dad, you're very much like your dad. Don't ever be like your dad.
Right. Yeah. Nice box to live in.
Nice box to live in. So that's what I did is I jumped into the box and put on the mask. I'm going to be the good kid. I'm going to be the perfect kid. And that's what I strive to be. And in the Mankind Project, what we talk about is shadow, right? So in the meantime that I jumped into that box and put on that mask, I was stuffing away all the things that I believed were unacceptable.
Yeah.
That was the pact that I made. So anything that confronted that, any kind of truth that confronted that was a threat. And then all of those things that I stuffed away popped up. They came out sideways.
Yeah.
And as I emerged into adulthood through my 20s, that stuff came out more and more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Okay. So now it's making more sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for filling that out for us. And so men's work is designed to do what for a man? Like, we take, like you,
Yeah.
when age 29 or 30, you kind of enter the Mankind Project to experience something. This guy, chiropractor, says, hey, go check this thing out. You have brothers doing it. What's the guy supposed to experience or do when people suggest that? Shouldn't he just go to his male friends or a mentor, a counselor or someone?
He might, and that might be the perfect step for him. And what men's work has been for me, and especially, the process that I went through with the New Warrior training adventure, that weekend experience, was it really blasted apart the armor that I had spent decades putting on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in an environment where there was an intensity about the environment that showed me a couple of things, that showed me that I wasn't alone in the shame, fear, rage, grief, joy, play, all the things that I'd been stuffing away, showed me that I wasn't alone, and showed me that I was capable of a whole lot more in terms of my powerful self-expression than I ever believed was possible, because of the container that was created through that work. And I think that that's really one of the foundations of men's work. Is it's a container meaning, we're going to build some boundaries around this. We're going to create a kind of space together. Your listeners probably know what this is in some ways, right? Yeah. We're going to create a space together where we can really push the edges of what we're capable of. And that was the first time that I had really experienced that. So I think that that's one of the things. It's a place of, it's a practice space. It's a laboratory for emotional exploration, soul exploration, purpose exploration, integrity exploration, that I think is largely missing in our culture, mm-hmm. in a deep, intimate way between men.
Why is that? Why are we missing that? What's going on?
I think that that's a very long conversation. And for me, that's a very long and intersectional conversation as well. I think there are a whole lot of cultural factors that play into that. The whole man box story, what we're shown as what you're supposed to be a man, that's been really flattened out and two-dimensionalized through commercial culture, through media culture, through what we take on as the kind of literary archetypes of the past 150 years, show us a stereotype of what it means to be a man that is not the full story of what it means to be a human being. And so I think that's one of the big whys is, I grew up thinking that I had to hide, that I had to, boys don't cry, all of that stuff, all of those messages that we take on. So I think that's a big part of it. I think we live in a transactional culture these days where it's like, I'll give you something if you give me something. And if you don't give me something, fuck you. I'm not giving you anything. I can pay for what I need as a man, and I don't need anything else. And right. By the way, society tells me I'm not supposed to need anything else.
Yeah, you're fine on your own.
You're fine on your own. You're supposed to be on your own. And if you're not okay on your own, then something is obviously wrong with you,
you're a pussy.
Bro.
Yeah.
Yep. So all of those things kind of play into it. And I also think that just kind of in history writ large, the speed of our culture, we have lost something essential in the ability to have long, slow conversations about things that matter.
Face to face.
In
real person time, right? Next to each other.
In community, mm-hmm. right? And 200 years ago, we were kind of forced into that by the nature of the way the world worked, right? But today, I can live 50 yards from somebody for 4.5 years and know nothing.
Yeah, never talk to them
about who they are.
Right.
That's not the way the world worked back then. And I think that men's work, women's work, the kind of community building work that you're doing, that we're doing, is about reclaiming the lost art of long, slow conversations.
That's cool. I like that. Would you say, well, let me ask you a few more questions. Well, let me do this. So I want to share kind of my quick take, and then I want to get your take on my take.
Please.
So I want to add a couple things that men, it seems that to be an empowered male, which is just really like take off the labels, it's just to be an empowered person, one has to extract themselves from all the conditioning and the shoulds and the superimposition that is, they place on themselves and other people put on them, expectations, to like find out who we are, right? And there's a journey that needs to be made. That's like the hero's journey.
Yes.
And as a little kid, like especially now, still watching my son grow up, the boy code and the boy culture is still very prevalent, and it's still running the show, which is boys don't cry, boys play sports, boys, need to be independent and strong and suck it up and blah, blah, blah. It's still like, that's the programming, right?
Yeah.
And then that turns
even in and amongst us woke folk, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Even in a private school.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of get older, and boys that agree to that and parents who conform to that and don't sort of fight back against that and just sort of go along, or they're working so they can't actually pay attention to actually the care and feeding of the boys. It turns into adult males who are totally relationally inept because they've had to bury and stuff all these awesome superpowers, yet they're sensitive as hell underneath, a lot of them underneath the armor. And so it's like a mixed message, right? There's a sensitive, beautiful guy this woman wants to be with, but he's like kind of a pain in the ass because he's like so irritable all the time and shut down.
Yes.
And then the guy is like lost because his true self is hiding below the surface where he really wants to be himself and be free, but he's bought into it and he doesn't even know that he's in a program, right? So how do we, if that's all true, and I'm seeing the head nods and hearing you say yes, if that's all true, how in the hell does a guy make the move to get out of the programming and into a place of more empowerment and choice and relational and social, competency?
Yeah, beautiful. I think it's forced on us a lot of the time. I mean, if you're actually there and at a place where it's time for you to choose, and you're actually capable of taking that one side step, stepping far enough away from your ego that you can see that you're in a program or start to catch a glimpse of the programming. I'm a Marvel movie fan. Doctor Strange. Do you know the Doctor Strange movie?
I heard of it. I don't know the story.
Okay. So there's just this one particular scene in Doctor Strange. He's absolutely arrogant, and goes to the wise master, and the wise master is saying, no, you don't really understand. He's like, no, I get it. Teach me. And the wise master goes and knocks his soul out of his body. And from that vantage point of having his soul knocked out of his body, he finally recognizes, I don't know shit.
Uh-huh.
Maybe there's something else that I need to look at here. And I think that a lot of us are in the world where the pain gets to be enough.
Yeah.
Environmental pain, environmental factors play a large role in evolution. When the environment gets harsh enough to force the creature to change, the creature evolves.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of men are kind of just now, the prevalence of this conversation in our society is just growing and growing and growing and amplifying. And I believe that's largely because the pain in our culture of this anti-humanness that men and women are experiencing, that all of us are experiencing, there's like our bodies are revolting against it.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I mean, the rise of autoimmune diseases is an example, right? It's just like everybody over 45. I mean, most people I know are like, I don't know what's going on with my health, but something's off here. And then if they go get it checked out, especially with a smart functional medicine doc, it's like, you have an autoimmune disease.
Yeah. The other one of those that I really love, Dr. Gabor Mate. Do you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's been on the podcast. Yeah.
Another reason to envy Jason. Wow. That's so cool. Love that man.
Totally. He's amazing.
The addictive process, he talks about it's not necessarily addiction. It's not that we're just looking at this. We're looking at an addictive process. We're looking at messed up feedback and reward systems. We're looking at physical stuff that's manifesting, and we're looking at cultural stuff that's manifesting through all of us. We live in an addicted, traumatized culture.
Right.
And how can we not react to that in some way?
Well, you put those words together, addicted, traumatized. So if I flip those around and say, okay, the trauma came first, now I have an addiction. My addiction now is the very thing that keeps me actually from facing my trauma, right? So I actually can't get the feedback of the pain that would wake me up.
Yes.
And this is where a lot of men are caught.
Yes.
And the addiction could be porn, it could be sports, it could be just numbing out all day on Netflix, it could be workaholism, right? And I get to avoid my pain, and I can make enough money to kind of buffer against the pain that I'm experiencing and the loneliness and the just despair that I feel inside. And I don't want to ever slow down because I might actually feel that. And I've never been taught to feel my feelings, so why the fuck would I want to do that?
Beautiful. And you and I are presence junkies, right? So we have to get to that point of being able to self-presence. I have to be able to be present enough with myself and experience what I'm actually feeling willingly, consciously, experience what I'm feeling before I'm going to be able to step far enough away from this cyclical trap that I'm in, that I'm going to be able to help and see and be present for someone else. Mm-hmm. And you said it's a catch-22, because I totally, you said, most guys, no matter how thick the armor, no matter how bulletproof they appear to be, they're beautiful, soft, sweet, sensitive, hurting creatures.
Right.
We are, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of practice and courage. I mean, talk about, if you want to play on masculine tropes, right? Like, talk about courage and strength and bravery.
Yeah, to face oneself is to me the ultimate courage, Yeah, to be able to do that. All right, quick interruption from us here at the Relationship School to remind you about Deeper, relationshipschool.com/deeper. Check out what Casey had to say, who went through our 9-month training.
As an entrepreneur, I face a lot of my time looking at myself and what I'm doing and how to improve my business. And I was feeling like I was hitting walls personally and professionally. And those walls weren't like skills, like business skills. They were like interpersonal issues. They were the things that were keeping me up at night. It was the frustration that I felt. It was sweating. It was the tension. And it was like not knowing this stuff. So I enrolled in Deeper 9 months ago and just kind of had my life dramatically shifted. I got in touch with myself in a way that I've never been in touch with myself before. My whole life I've been striving and working and building and growing, but all of those things felt like exterior and none of it felt interior. Deeper broke that shell open, and it feels like I'm like peeling apart this armor that I've built to get an understanding of who I am, understanding that these emotions I felt were anxiety, and I could find where that anxiety lives in my body and what to do with it and how to see the triggers in my life that cause it and create space between those triggering events and the actual emotion. Jason talks about this core human split between who I am and who I act as in order to get love and care and attachment. And it's about closing that gap. And through Deeper, I learned skills and tools to apply to that part of me, tools that help my marriage. Our arguments are short-lived. We resolve them quickly. To say it's been life-changing feels trite, but I don't know how else to describe this and how powerful it is. I'm just feeling more secure in who I am and what I'm doing, and how that reflects in business is that I'm establishing better boundaries to support myself. I'm not feeling as emotional around the ups and downs of business, which has been huge for my well-being. It's just like touching to be around people that care, that want to be part of the conversation and support me and push me along. You can't change your life in 2 days. When I started going to the gym, it's not like I got fit in a weekend. 9 months is a pretty solid course. I don't know anyone else. And I've looked, right? I've gone through live events and audio programs and read books and attended conferences, and no one has this education that Jason has. Jason offers a step-by-step approach that helped me see who I am and how I show up and why I show up that way, and give me the choice to change my behaviors based on changing my values, change my relationship by creating new agreements, and have the relationship that I want.
Wow. Casey, thanks, man. Casey rocked it in the course and just went all in, and so did his wife, and they just had an amazing time, and they have a better marriage. So you want to join us, relationshipschool.com/DPIR to apply. All right, back to the podcast. Do you because you understand marketing a little bit, and back at the Evolving Men's Conference, one of the crux of our conversation, if I remember it right, was like, how do we reach more men to get them interested in men's work? And so I have two questions here. One is men's work getting more popular? Is it actually growing? Are we reaching more guys? And two, if so or if not, how are we getting more effective somehow at reaching more men, or are more men somehow just breaking through on their own and then coming to these kind of organizations?
Those are great questions. The answer to number one is absolutely. I mean, I have been watching the Mankind Project's growth and evolution over the last 15 years. And for 8+ years, I've been in a role with MKP, working on PR and communications and how we're getting out into the world. And just the last year and a half, men's organizations and this men's conversation, the conversation about masculinity, we haven't even touched MeToo, right? So we haven't touched about that, and let's hold that too.
Yeah, totally.
And the Mankind Project ended up with a front page spread in the style section of the New York Times.
That's badass.
Netflix, we're in conversations with multiple other networks about doing programs about what we do. The evidence base is growing, so there's more research being done about the effectiveness of what we call men's work, which is really about breaking men's isolation, teaching new social emotional skills, doing remedial stuff for men for the damage that we face. And we're learning that, hey, wow, when you break this isolation, and then you look at the business world, and the business world coming out of like the diversity inclusion conversation, like empathy, there's right? Empathy is the thing that you have to build into all your leadership, or else your organization is going to go belly up in 10 years.
Yeah.
Because AI is going to take the rest of the job. So you better be freaking human.
Yeah.
In order to succeed. So I think the conversation has gotten much bigger. MKP has had an incredible last couple of years. Our enrollment is growing. Our number of groups is growing. Our reach into other countries is growing. All other organizations, we talked about Everyman a little bit. All other organizations are coming up and meeting different niches in the market and touching different demographics and other kinds of men. All of that's true. And then I think more men are, having the conversation about men's emotional intelligence and maturity 10 years ago versus today. It's totally different conversation.
So cool. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see that for sure. And I even see, I think the millennials, I just quickly get your take on this. With influencers like Tim Ferriss and Gary Vee, who have a huge followings in young male populations around making money and succeeding and being an entrepreneur and starting your own business, they talk about self-awareness being like cool. And so those guys, I think, are also having an impact on the younger male generation, trying to just saying like, look, if you want to succeed, quote, succeed in life, you got to look at yourself.
Yep.
Right? That's pretty neat.
Gary Vee, right? He's like kind of hard-assed, kind of dude, and yet so much of what he talks about is like kindness, empathy, relationship.
Yeah.
Like this is what you have to build in order to succeed, right? And that,
Yeah.
I think that's the world we're living in.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, let's add on to Me Too. So I'd love to get your take on Me Too. Now that we kind of understand men's work is growing, it's cool. Like, well, let me back up one step. Is the reason men's work growing is what's your theory on that? Is it because it's just more out there in the media, it's more accepted? Or is it that more men are in pain and they're willing and less addicted? Like, what's going on with just why?
I think it's both. I think it's both and.
Okay, just a number of factors.
I think men come to it through all kinds of doors. Transition seems to be a kind of common theme. Something's in transition. Some shift is happening, no matter how old a guy is. And then Me Too, I think, has woken a lot of men up and kind of exposed something in the culture that we just didn't talk about. Our male privilege has allowed us to keep the damage that we are causing largely unspoken.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the world we live in anymore.
Yeah.
And millennials like the transparency generations, right? So starting with the millennials, Gen Xers may have been the last generation that was trying to hold on to that, but postmodernism kind of blew it apart. Millennials expect transparency.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's part of who they follow on social media, right? If you're not transparent on social media, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and how that plays into the awakening willingness to see and take responsibility for our impacts in the world. That does not mean, get it out of our heads about blame, get it out of our heads about shame and guilt and that and all of that.
Yeah.
Take responsibility.
Hell yeah.
As a man, I want to take responsibility for creating what I want in the world. So when I see that kind of impact being created, when I see the sexual trauma and violence perpetrated largely by men, I want to be a part of creating a culture where that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So if we keep going here with Me Too pops up, and it's been a while now. What's go and take another step here. What have you noticed about that? How has that been helpful? What's not helpful about it? What's your take?
Tarana Burke has talked about, Tarana Burke, the kind of original founder of Me Too movement, right, has now talked about, wait, no, this was not meant to be a takedown movement. This was not meant to be a hurt men and take them down movement. This was meant to be a movement about witnessing, bearing witness to, and doing something about survivor stories.
Yeah.
This was about witnessing the pain. So I think where Me Too hurts is when it perpetuates a culture of attack, of takedown, kind of the conversation about cancel culture, the conversation about that kind of stuff. Because when I'm triggered into my shame, I become unwilling to listen.
Yeah. Yep.
And I believe that a lot of other guys are like that too.
Absolutely.
So, I'm kind of pulling guys into this by saying, okay, let's get into the real difficult work of being willing to stand with someone who's in pain
and see them. Take responsibility if we need to.
Take responsibility for our own actions.
Understand the impact.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a great point. Thank you for saying all that. And the tricky thing about some men, because we're so defended and there's so much shame and the defensive barrier is so strong now, if more blame comes, right, I'm just going to double down on my defensive strategy.
Right.
And narcissism, if we talk about sort of the male narcissism, if we want to go there, or the sociopathic male, is just protecting against shame and the deep fear and the insecurities. And a lot of that got created in the earliest form, like first 2 years of life, honestly, if you study narcissism. And it's like, why would we continue to attack someone? And the tricky part is the narcissistic male is so defended that there's no crack to be open to the feedback or impact, right? There's no impact.
Right.
But I think what's cool about these sort of awakening men and the men that are willing to flex the empathic muscles, willing to get that there's impact over there, are really causing, like the ripple, I think, is getting bigger. And it's hence the numbers in the Mankind Project of men who are standing up, willing to be what you're talking about, willing to listen, willing to own their part, willing to say, God, oh my God, look at the impact over here. Holy shit, look at what we've done.
Yeah, look at what we've done. And man, I've learned, we're not talking about parenting so much, but the more in depth that I've become as a trauma-informed parent, an adoptive parent of older kids who experience trauma, the more I recognize that, like, when I get into a circle with a 50-year-old guy who's in that defended place, like what I'm actually talking to is the traumatized 4-year-old boy.
Totally. Who's terrified, right? To let you in. Because it's not going to go well. Last time he let someone else in, he got smashed or ignored.
Yeah. And then it goes back to like, okay, simple stuff. What do good parents do? Catch him doing something right.
Yeah.
What can I catch this guy doing right?
Yeah.
Right, in this situation or in his life? How can I find one strength that I can work with him? And then integral theory. So all of a sudden we're in integral theory.
Right.
Something that I love. So transcend and include. Yeah, great. Transcend and include. We got it. Okay, understood. What I also really love about integral theory, that's kind of a little underneath that. So when you can't include, what do? We contain and protect. So for the narcissists, for the guy who, isn't, that the impact isn't going to hit, so I can build skills to learn how to put boundaries around, to protect that impact from hurting other people, and to contain dangerous people in such a way that they aren't going to have a wider ripple of impact into community.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. That's great. Nice way to weave in the Ken's work.
Yeah.
I forgot you're a Ken integral guy a little bit, right? Like you're not hardcore. Are you hardcore?
I am not hardcore.
But you like the theory, and I'm with you.
Yes.
Yeah, sweet. So we just have a few minutes left, and I want to talk about fatherhood for a minute. I could keep going deeper into this stuff. I really enjoying chatting with you here. It's so fun. Being a dad, and you've talked about adoptive parent, trauma informed. I guess I just love to hear your personal experience of fatherhood. How's it going?
I am. It's all that. I'm so grateful for my kids. I have learned so much. So I did, a decade of men's work before I became a parent, and all that work has been, every skill that I've learned was instantly needed as a father. I've learned more in the last 6 years about how to be fully present, inhabiting my body with another human being, these younger human beings that I'm blessed to have in my life, in a way that I don't know that I could have learned this any other way. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I could have gotten just how important it is for me to slow down, get present, and be available for for another human being. And the gifts that emerge for me out of that have been astounding. And, that's all the beautiful, fluffy stuff. And it's also been grueling and excruciating.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I would have done, dads out there. I don't know what I would have done without having a men's group.
Yeah.
I mean, the first year and a half of my parenting journey, I had a kid who basically just told me that they hated me over and over and over.
Oh my God.
In every possible way that they could.
Yeah.
And I knew it's not the kid, it's the trauma.
Yeah. Well, you had that view, which is enormous, right?
I had that view. And even though I had that view, I still needed, I'm just going to say it, I depended on these guys that I had in my life because I had a place to go where I could break down.
Yeah.
To experience the pain and grief, to experience the rage that I felt about what my children experienced in their younger life that I have no control over.
Oh my God.
And also the compassion and empathy that I'm able now to have, not only for them, but for the generations, for the epigenetic trauma that has been handed down over generations to these kids. And I think, like, if there's any reason for you, man, to do men's work, it's that you break free not only of this programming that you find yourself, that I found myself in, but it's like also I'm seeing family culture in a different way. I'm seeing like the intersections of class and economics and race and ethnicity and language and all of those things interwoven. And it's like, I have compassion for every single piece of that.
Yeah.
Not that that's easy.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yeah. And you've done a lot of work to cultivate that capacity in yourself, right?
Yes. And yeah. Meditation, mindfulness work, body work, somatic work, archetypal work, shadow work, all that.
Hell yeah. Yeah. And one last thing about men's work, how has it helped your marriage?
So same. I mean, presence is it, man. I was a guy with a very thick mask, and I was a spiritual bypasser, and I was a gaslighter, spiritual gaslighter. So, interrogate that in yourself. It was always her problem.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate. Yep.
Right? It was always her problem. And I was like the fucking floating above the ground. I'm, holy bullshit. That's my bullshit. So what men's work has taught me about being in a marriage is to take how I take responsibility, how I hold container, how I can hold space for for whatever my wife is experiencing. And how I can remove the burden of my emotional labor from her so that I have a place to do my emotional work.
Yep.
So she doesn't have to carry it for me. And I still screw up.
Of course.
You're a guy. Still a D-bag. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So if a guy's listening and he's interested as we move towards closing here, Boysen, what's a step a guy can take, and what can he expect to experience if he joins a men's group or does a New Warriors training? What can he expect?
Yeah. A step to take is go to mankindproject.org. So that's real easy. Go to mankindproject.org.
There's men's, those all over the country and all over the world now.
That's right. We have men's groups in about 26 countries. We have training centers in 14 regions around the world. We do over 200 New Warrior training adventures a year. We serve about 10,000 guys a week in men's groups. So there are over 800 men's groups operating in the United States right now.
Wow.
for guys. So what you can expect is you're going to go into a container of men who are there for their personal development and to help you get what you came for, whatever that is. And the process of the New Warrior training adventure, we talk about it as like, it's not for every man. And here's the easiest way to say it. When you arrive, you're going to be challenged, and the guy is going to look at you and say, this training is going to challenge you physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get what you came here to get? And he's not going to let you in the door unless you're willing to commit to that.
Nice. Such a good one. It's like the bouncer.
It is. It's a spiritual bouncer at the door, guarding the container. And for me and for a lot of other guys, that was a turning point in my life. That was a marker in my life that I can still go back and viscerally experience what that felt like. And I can attribute so much of the growth that I've had because of the practices that I started on that weekend.
Awesome. Wow, cool. Okay, so mankindproject.org.
That's the one.
Cool. And if someone wants to follow up with you, I imagine you're super busy. Do you want to include like a Instagram handle or a email or anything in our show notes?
Totally. Twitter's easier for me. Okay. I'm not a huge Insta.
Great.
At Boysen H, Boysenh.
Great.
At Boysen H.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes. And if you want to reach out to Boysen, you can do that on Twitter. Very cool. Boysen, it's been so awesome hanging with you. And thanks so much for your wisdom. All the just amazing, your capacity to help your own family, and then how you're reaching that out and helping the men in the world. It's so needed. And I deeply appreciate you carrying that flame.
Thank you. I feel that. And I look at you, and you've been a model for me, and thank you.
Yeah, you got it, man. Yes. I love it when I talk to awesome men like Boysen. Okay, very intimate, right? We're just getting real, talking about what's actually going on with us men and ourselves. Thanks for your vulnerability, Boysen. And you can reach him at the mankindproject.org. Okay, mankindproject.org. If you want to get involved in the New Warrior training, sense and see what they're up to. I have never been, and I've heard it's great. So, and then you get paired, I think, with a men's group. So they're probably in a city or town near you. So I think it's worth looking up. The Mankind Project. We're also going to be doing an interview soon with the Everyman guys, Dan Doughty, who's been on the podcast before. They'll tell us about their men's organization at some point. So I want to make sure all the men listening and the folks are in relationship with men who could use men's work, that you get educated here and you get a good referral to some good programs, okay? Nice. What is your action step today? Well, if you're a man, it's pretty clear. It's admitting that something's not working in your life. Admit it first to yourself. Okay, I think Boysen alluded to that. Admit it to yourself. The next step, of course, is to admit it to someone you love and care about, or that loves you. Hey, I'm in pain. Because as we talked about, pain is often the thing that gets men to take a look in the mirror, because something is excruciating or not working in their lives. So that's when they go to therapy, or that's when they go to the Mankind Project, or that's when they come to the relationship school. So I just bow down to pain for getting me on the path and helping me wake up, okay? Get my life together. So admit it to yourself, and then reach out to a close friend and say, I'm hurting. Now, if you're not a man listening to this, how can you help men? That's one thing you can do is you can say, you can make an observation about the man in your life. Honey, or friend, male friend, I notice that you often do your pain alone. You don't have anyone. It seems like you don't have anyone to talk to. You barely talk to me about it. And I bet you could use a place to, with other men perhaps, to vent, to express your frustrations with me, to go to a safe place where you can just let some steam out and just get it off your chest. It's extremely healing, right? Men die all the time and every year because they're dying in isolation and loneliness, and they feel trapped in their male conditioning, as we talked about. And it's pretty thick, guys. The male conditioning for a man is very thick. So the way to break through that is to admit it to yourself and then admit it to someone else that you're hurting or in pain, or you feel alone and you don't want to feel alone anymore. You want to feel connected, okay? You can also obviously come to our programs. It depends on, do you want to be with men only? Do you want to come at a relationship school and learn how to talk to your partner better, your spouse, your family, your kids? What do you want? And the Man King Project is one place to do that, okay? Okay, thanks again for being here, everybody. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Loads and loads. The podcast also goes on YouTube. It goes on Apple Podcasts. It goes on Spotify now, Google Play. And it depends on how you like to listen, okay? You can watch it on your phone. You can listen to it on your phone, et cetera, et cetera. So subscribe. Leave us a review if you feel inspired. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody. And we'll talk very soon. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Relationship School fans and Smart Couple listeners, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, all right? Do us a favor, subscribe, share one of these videos with a friend, all right? We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships, and you are one of them, so thank you.